What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode number 1. That's right, the inaugural episode of the War Room podcast. My name is Rob, and this is my guy, Andrew. Some call him Andy. You can call him Andy. And we thank you for joining and being a part of the 33rd War Room. Andy, my man, what's going on?
Not too much, Rob. Just ready to get things rolling. Just very excited for the initial episode. How about you?
Same, man. Same. Long awaited. We've been planning this for a long time. We've had a few people tell us we should do something like this. This time of year, we're usually kind of getting everything all set up and ready for the season. Unfortunately, we're hoping we're ready for the season. Interesting year. Definitely got the fingers crossed on that. But this is going to be a kind of a different podcast than what you're used to hearing from the normal football podcasts. This is not us competing with anybody. We're just two guys for the love of the game, just talking ball, honestly. We go really hard into the draft. We love talking about, the sleepers, the diamonds in the rough, things along those lines. That's going to be the majority of this podcast. You're not going to hear a lot of first round talk out of us. Obviously, you will when it first starts, but as we move on, we're going to go deeper and deeper. Everything football. We've been lucky enough to have about combined close to 20 years experience in the sports industry. We're going to talk everything football from the draft, from free agency to, just schemes, a lot of scheme talk, X's and O's, teams, coaches, things like that. Going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the big thing at the end of the day, as you can tell by what we're wearing, for me from the Bills shirt and Rob from his Raiders jersey, we're going to keep this completely neutral. I mean, there are going to be certain times where I'm going to be a homer and I'm going to talk about my Bills Mafia, and there's going to be certain times where Rob talks about those Vegas Raiders, which is definitely going to be tough for me to continue to say that. But our big thing is just about passion. We love the game. We watch the game, and we watch way too much of the game. So our wives decided that it was finally time for us to take our romance to the next level and just put it out there in the world for you guys to hear and listen. So we're excited to get this thing kicked off. Episode 1, a lot more to come, which is going to be great. And anything that you guys want to hear in the future, absolutely let us know. We'll let you know our social handles at the end. But let's just kick it off. So, Rob, let's dive into it.
Absolutely. Also, to add on that too, real quick, any ideas that you guys might have, anything that you might want to hear, please add it to the description below. Any comments you got, right down below, please throw that down there. We're open to anything as long as it's football related. So, way I kind of thought about going about this, honestly, we're just going to talk. We're just going to have some good-hearted conversation. I'm sure there'll be plenty of arguing, throughout the way. And, I think today what we're going to do is kind of introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about ourselves. Then we have a couple questions lined up for each other. So Andy, why don't you tell the folk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, diehard Buffalo Bills fan, Bills Mafia, Bills Nation. Living down here in New Jersey, but born and raised in upstate New York. So a fan of the only true New York football team. I don't care about any of you Giants fans. I don't care about any of you Jets fans. For all I'm concerned, every single one of you Jets fans gave you your quarterback, Sam Darnold, mono. But to go back to where I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, like I said, born and raised in Syracuse, New York, born in '88. So my bread and butter years were watching the Buffalo Bills go to 4 straight Super Bowls. And the joke that I'm so tired of hearing people say is, you know what Bill stands for, boy, I love losing Super Bowls. Yeah, original. But we've made it to the playoffs the last 2 out of the 3 years. Big day for us today. We re-signed our coach to a huge contract, and we re-signed our left tackle, Deion Dawkins, to a 4-year extension, $60 million, which is huge. But yeah, just been a diehard Bills fan, travel along with the team. So I go to 1 away game every single year. Which coincides with an away football game, for college as well. So every single year I'm on the road with the Bills and I go to a home Bills game. So I just bleed the team. I'm the type of guy that my favorite player growing up when I started paying attention to football was Stevie Johnson. So it's not that I'm a front runner fan. It's a guy that I find a guy who had dreadlocks, who was a rapper out of Kentucky, who was a 7th round pick, who Chan Gailey, who was supposed to be an offensive guru, who was absolute trash, and I'm super excited he's back in the NFL. He was the guy that brought him in. And now, it brought me to all the way where I'm at now, where I analyze the draft, go after all those different sleepers that we possibly can, and just really a true fan of the game. But like I said, I'll do my best not to be a homer. But it may be tough on this podcast if Rob starts talking about the Patriots for me to understand and appreciate the conversation. But with that, I'll kick it back to you, Rob.
Before I go, have you ever been powerbombed through a table by a member of the Bills Mafia?
I have not, but I have witnessed multiple power bombs up at Orchard Park, multiple flaming tables up at Orchard Park, and also some scenes where people didn't make it to their seats. And what I mean by that, they came and sat next to us, and before they could sit down, they fell over and went down 5 or 6 rows. It's a completely unique experience, man. I had one quick story was we went to a game, and we were with my brother-in-law, and at this time he was dating my sister. And I'm 6'2", 190. My brother is 6'2", 220. My dad is 6'2", like 190. And my brother-in-law is 6 foot, like 160, soaking wet. And we go to the game, and we're up in the stands, and all of a sudden, one of these drunk fans turns around. It's a girl, and she starts hitting on my brother-in-law. And she's like, "Why aren't you hitting on me? Why aren't you doing anything?" And the entire time, I'm just standing there with my brother and my dad, and he looks over and he goes, "That's my brother-in-law, soon-to-be brother-in-law, both of them, and their father." And the girl's just like, "I don't care, Bills Mafia." And then at that point, I was just like, this is it. This is great. Good work on my brother-in-law, but also good work on the fan base.
Absolutely. Real good work. I like that. So, yeah, as Andy said before, I am a diehard Raider fan. You said Bills Nation. I'm just going to throw out there, there's only one nation, #OneNation right here. But, big Jersey guy. My dad did some advertising for a gentleman by the name of Art Toms, who basically ran a shop up in Monmouth County. Did some advertising for him back in, I think it was 1967. He introduced him to his son, who was drafted by the Raiders in the first round, and I believe it was 67. Ever since then, he was a big fan, and you know, I've had the pleasure and the luxury of him passing down his fandom to me, because the Raiders have been so much fun for me to watch in my lifetime. Sarcasm alert here. They've never gotten me. They've never irritated me. They've never rubbed me the wrong way. They've never made, a draft pick that I absolutely hated, aside from the majority of them. But in all honesty, it's weird. To me, I'm a fan of other teams in sports, not football, obviously. Something about the Raiders, it's in the blood. It's never going anywhere. There's nothing this team could possibly do that would ever stray me away from being a fan of them. I did win a contest once through Pepsi when I was working at a little shop in
this story's
Parkway
crazy.
Rest Stop. I won a contest for my customer service, because I'm a phenomenal person, and I'm just the kindest, most gentle man in the history of the world. And I won a contest, and they basically told me that I could go anywhere that I wanted to go in the world. I literally got handed the paperwork.
Hold on. Let's pause that real quick.
Yeah.
The world.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
continue. I just want to make.
Yeah. Picked up the phone immediately, dialed in. She asked where I wanted to go. I said Oakland, California. She legit laughed at me, and I stood there. I'm just like, I'm straight faced. That's where I'm going. I'm going to Oakland, California. She goes, "You realize this is anywhere in the world, right?" She's like, "Italy, Rome." I'm like, "Oh no. I'm going to Oakland, California with my father." We get there. Tailgating, one of the best moments of my life. I'm not going to say the best moment of my life, because my wife could be listening to this and I want to get in trouble. But one of the best moments of my life. We go there. They lose 29-0. So from Jersey to Cali, I didn't even get to see a field goal. So a little rough, but the tailgating experience was incredible. That fan base is just such a blast. They brought me down to the field because one of the security guys found out I was from Jersey. Got to meet Zach Crockett, Marcus Tuiasi-Sopo. Like, that was the time period. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, you're not going to be a homer, though, to be honest. I'm very critical of what the Raiders do, and I don't agree with a lot of it lately. Since Mayock's been there, I've been much more on board with what's going on. But it's going to be I won't be a homer. I'm definitely not a homer. I'll say that. Definitely not a homer.
No. I mean, California trips haven't been kind to either of us. I went to the Bills 49ers game at Candlestick when Alex Smith was the quarterback, was on field for the game right before that. Then Alex Smith torched the Bills 49-3.
Okay.
something like that. But I at least got to say roll tide to Marcel Darius before he went off the rocker, and
I
he
like
roll
that.
tide back. So
I like that. So we've been to 2 Cali games and we've seen 3 points.
yeah, no, we're good. We're good teams. We're good
Yeah.
squads.
Let's not do that again.
No, I'm done with that. I'm not going West Coast.
Yeah. All right, so Andy, for the first topic here, give me your thoughts on the Bills draft. What would you grade it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough part with me is like I'll look at the draft as a whole as the full draft, but I'm also going to look at the aspects that we got out of the draft as well. So what makes that unique for me is the Buffalo Bills traded away their first round pick for Stephon Diggs. So Stephon Diggs, arguably one of the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL right now. And for where our team is, playoff team, had pieces. Like if you saw us play against the Dallas Cowboys, we smoked them on Thanksgiving. The playoff game that we were playing in, we were winning, but we didn't have that piece. Josh Allen has to come a long way, but we need that number one wide receiver. So in our draft, I'm counting Diggs in our draft, but still I'm hypercritical of just about what we did in rounds 5 and 6. And what I'm saying about rounds 5 and 6 is I'm a guy that loves the late round picks, that loves the guys that are going to be people that wouldn't make a roster normally. And 5 and 6 is where you can still get some deep talent. It's a proven concept on our roster where Matt Milano is our linebacker who's about to get a huge deal depending upon either with the Bills or somewhere else. And we draft Jake Fromm and Tyler Bass. So we draft a quarterback and a kicker. So I get the quarterback aspect and everyone's like, oh, well, it could be a backup. It could be this. It could be that. I don't want any controversy, any conversation, any talks about that in Buffalo anymore. We've had that before. Granted, all our quarterbacks were trash in the past. We've had J.P. Lossman, Trent Edwards. I don't want to hear it. Anytime that Josh Allen throws one pass, I don't want to hear it's time to bring in Jake Fromm. It's just not needed. And then bringing in a kicker and signing a kicker in the 6th round, I get it if you think he's the best one, but the 6th round, there's still plenty of talent. And I know we're going to talk about it later in the show, is that there's still plenty of talent on the board that you can draft besides a kicker. I mean, a kicker. I'm just going to say that. Granted, they get you the most points. They get you points guaranteed. But I just can't get behind that. So that's the only reason why I gave our draft a B- as of right now. I mean, I did love the pick of Zach Moss. Zach Moss tied up with Devin Singletary as our 2 running backs. Those are going to be ridiculous. And in a year without preseason games, what are you going to do the first couple of games? You're going to run the ball. So if we got 2 workhorses back there, also people forget we have TJ Yeldon in our backfield as well, who has a case of the whoopsies with the fumbles, but he can definitely catch the ball out of the backfield. So I definitely say a B- on our end. But the draft that I'm interested to hear about grading is the Raiders draft, because you know me personally, I loved the Raiders draft. So I'm interested in hearing what you got to say about your Raiders.
First off, was Tyler Bass the kicker that stiff-armed Grant Delpit? Was that him?
Nope.
I don't think it was, right? No? All right. Never mind.
That was
Anyway.
not.
All right.
That
No, just making sure.
Who was that? That was Blinken, or what's his name, from Georgia. That was a Georgia kicker with Rex Specs.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. All right. Just throwing that out there. So I'm going to go with a B+. This happens not every year, but this has happened a lot in my lifetime. The Raiders draft players that I usually like and grade high. I don't agree with where they're picked for the most part. Last year, loved Clelin Ferrell. Didn't like him at 4, obviously. This year, 12, I was in, as you know. Henry Ruggs, I have wanted since October, and his explosiveness, his hands, his vert, when the ball is not in his hands, he's almost more impressive than when it is. The dude blocks his ass off. The guy is just constantly headhunting. He's a phenomenal talent. Love that pick. Arnett, I really liked Arnett. I'll be honest, I had a 3rd round grade on him, but that does not mean I did not like him. I liked him in the 3rd round. I thought Gladney was a better talent there. To be honest, I was higher on Cam Dantzler than him. But again, that's not saying anything. I still liked Arnett. I didn't think 19 made sense.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't know what teams 20 through 32 are thinking. I have no way of knowing. I have no way of knowing if 20 is in in absolute love with him. Mayock does. So I'm not going to fight it. That's just how I look at things. Moving on, loved Brian Edwards. He's getting hyped up a lot right now. He's really getting hyped up. Loved Lynn Bowden. Lynn Bowden, again, he's going to be a piece, man. He's going to be a chess piece that we're going to use all over the field. Simpson, you talked him up to me. You got him on my radar. I know you loved him. Didn't think we were going to be looking at guard, to be honest. Our offensive line is pretty set aside from swing tackle. Our swing tackle situation is pretty beat, to be honest. But, love that pick. Love Tanner Muse out of Clemson, especially now that we're moving him to Will. Didn't want to see him in the secondary, really, but at the Will position, the dude's already up to he's close to I think he's at 244 I saw, or something like that. He's gonna be a lot of fun also. So all in all, and dude, so okay, I want to see how to word this. So when we drafted Armstrong, I went absolutely crazy because that is my absolute dude. I loved it. I absolutely loved that pick. Sorry, Robertson. My bad. I'm tired. My kid's been up all night. I apologize. Sorry. Amik Robertson. Absolutely loved the dude. He shorter guy, not a lot of stature. I get that. But man, he just he plays like a dog. He really does. He doesn't back down on anybody. And man, I know one guy you liked out of Texas, Colin Johnson. He played him straight up, face mask to face mask, straight up played him. Everybody's seen that GIF. It's all over Twitter. I get it.
Oh, yeah.
But man, it was a great draft for us. I'm very happy. I'm going to go with B+, and the only reason I'm going with B+ is because at 19, I really wanted Jalen Hurts. I understand nobody had a first round grade on him. That was my dude. That was my girl in this draft, dude. You know that. I wanted him at 19 bad. I'm not at all against Carr at the moment. I think especially with what's going on right now, we need to have a veteran QB presence with Gruden's playbook being the size of a Stephen King novel. I don't want to hand it over to a rookie, but someone like Jalen Hurts sitting behind him for a year, I'd be all in on that, especially with us having an out in Carr's contract after next season. And if Carr blows it up this year, great, fine. And no harm, no foul. Somebody would trade for him for Hurts. No problem. Or we just let him sit a little bit longer, like, we've seen so many times with Aaron Rodgers and, players along those lines. But, yeah, I'm going to go with a solid B+.
Well, let me ask you this question. How much money and how much of an inconvenience has it been for you now to switch to Old Spice? Because I know Old Spice is a big sponsor of rugs, so I know he wore the Old Spice robe. Like, is that hurting your hygiene now? Is that something we should worry about?
So here's the thing. First off, they don't make Old Spice robes in a 3XL that I can find. That hurts.
We got to make that change. That
hurts a little bit. I'm a strict Mitchum guy when it comes to deodorant. I'm never going to switch over that because it has a clean scent. I don't want people to smell my deodorant. I want them to smell the cologne. You know what I mean? My body fragrance is fantastic. So you add that to the cologne, we're good. I'm not trying to get any more scent out of my deodorant. So I'm straight Mitchum, Got to.
I just want to make sure. I just didn't know because it was a unique draft in general. I mean, I loved the draft. You loved the draft just because of the aspect of how in-depth it got with just how crazy you could see different aspects of it. But he was the most unique player because normally when you think of the draft, people are wearing I'm wearing my Gator shoes with $48 million worth of diamonds on them. And he was wearing an Old Spice robe sitting in his living room and him and his family was just going nuts. And it was great to see.
That's how we do.
He was just super happy, super joyful. If you watched his YouTube video prior, the lead up to the draft, it was awesome. He's a great dude, and I hope he works out for you guys because normally speed receivers don't work out for the Raiders. But yeah, I mean, he's got so much more, and I know he's your crush. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the season if there is a season. Which, fingers crossed, and all signs point to normal. We should have a season no matter what. But who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So talking about our team's drafts, like I said, I'm not a homer. I know you said you are, but you're not. So let's talk about what draft stuck out in your mind. What team's draft, and you don't have to do one. We are trying to keep this to 45 minutes, but we both like to talk. So if you want to go a little further, whatever. But yeah, what draft stuck out in your mind and why?
So I'm gonna do twofold. So I'm gonna do stuck out in my mind great, and then stuck out in my mind like why. And the good one, and it's kind of funny, is because I'm gonna say the Minnesota Vikings. So the Minnesota Vikings draft stuck out in my mind is just because if you talk about some of their names from top to bottom that they drafted, it's just like holy shit. So I mean, I wasn't big on Jefferson, the wide receiver out of LSU, but man, okay, you got rid of Diggs, get your wide receiver. They had Glandy, the cornerback out of TCU, which is fantastic. Danzo, the cornerback out of Mississippi State, which is fantastic. They got James Lynch, who's a defensive tackle but can play defensive end, which has had 13 and a half sacks for Baylor, which is a great pick. They had Troy Dye.
Player of the year too.
Oh, yeah. Troy Dye, the linebacker out of Oregon, which is just another sneaky pick that they took. I mean, Harrison Hand, the corner out of Temple. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And then I'm not even getting to my favorite player where they draft Kenny Willix, the D end out of Michigan State. I mean, their draft from top to bottom in a year where they didn't know that there weren't going to be any preseason games. They didn't know that there weren't going to be any like a hard signing period where you can only have 80 players on the roster. They legitimately went out there and drafted, all right, these people were productive in college. Let's bring them into the pros and see what they pan out. Let's just start competition. And they didn't draft any one position over another. They drafted literally every position. Even if they had a stud player at that position, they drafted it because they wanted to do competition, which was fantastic. And it's good to see. I mean, I have nothing against the Minnesota Vikings, and I thought they did a fantastic job. But for everybody that does a fantastic job, you have somebody that thinks that they're smarter than the entire NFL.
Hold on. Can I say something about Willekes real quick?
Yeah.
That dude's an awesome story, man. He was an awesome story. So he actually, when he got injured, I believe it was his junior year. I think it was his junior year. He got hurt. It might have been an ACL or something like that. He actually joined a coaching staff. Like he was like a legit coach on that team. Like he is awesome. He was really cool. I love that pick also. Sorry, go on.
No, junior year he had 20.5 tackles for loss.
So was it what year did he get hurt?
So it was probably sophomore year where he got hurt because I think he only had 5.5 sacks. Where it's like, oh, 5.5, that's tough year. But
yeah,
freak. Like I know we're gonna talk about it later. One of the things we want to talk about is one of the prospects that like people aren't talking about, and like I'm in love with this guy.
Yeah.
Where he literally put a video out there where it's just like, screw you haters. He's like, you call me not athletic, and he like ran up to a wall. And did
remember that?
Off it. Like
Yeah.
I have trouble running and touching a wall. I use the wall as my support so I can keep standing up. Otherwise, I fall down and hit my life alert. Like, it's just insane. But for every good draft, there's just a bad draft. And my bad draft in my eyes, where I'm so tired of everybody talking about how great this team is, and they are great. And so don't get me wrong, they have a great quarterback, but Seattle's draft, woof. You mean to tell me Brooks, the linebacker out of Texas Tech, is the 27th pick overall in the NFL draft?
Hold on. So I'm noticing this with Seattle. I'll be honest. I actually like that pick. I honestly did. I love Jordan Brooks coming out. The same thing happened with Frank Clark when they drafted Frank Clark. I thought, like, you look at those guys as like round 2, maybe round 3 guys. I loved Brooks because, obviously Oakland at the time was we needed linebackers going into this year, so I was really high on him. I can see it with Seattle with that one. I agree. I don't like the rest of their draft. I think Alton Robinson could be a good steal later on as a round 5 guy from Syracuse. He's raw as hell, but like I like that. Other than that, I totally agree. But man, I get it. I get that pick. I really do.
It's just like, look at their needs of what they needed. And I get linebacker, great. And he could be a sleeper. He could be a sneak pick. And yeah, I mean, Alton Robinson, love him. Think it's a great pick. But I mean, like DJ Dallas in the 4th round. You're saying the running back out of Miami. Really?
Yeah, I agree.
And then you're saying in the 6th round, when there were so many free agent wide receivers that signed after, like undrafted free agent wide receivers, you're drafting Freddie Swain out of Florida. I'm a Florida Gator fan, and I've seen him play. I would have not drafted him. I mean, if you're drafting him, and if they're saying they're drafting him as a specialist and a punt returner and this, that, and the other thing, you can sign him. You do not need to waste a draft pick on him. But I don't know. Seattle is getting to me where, in my eyes, it's the type of thing where they're trying to be smarter than everybody else, and they're acting like they're better than everybody else. And you can do that when you have a quarterback and a cornerstone of your franchise, which, great. I'm not going to take anything away from them. They're still a solid team. Their defense is going to be scary again, even though I think Adams is a great safety. He still doesn't have any interceptions really on his entire professional career. They're going to be a good squad. But just looking at their draft top to bottom and where they drafted players, there were other players on the board and different things that they could have done. But that's just me.
Adams, too, though, man, you can't call him a safety. That dude plays every position on the field. Every position. I know that you're going to hate him because he was a Jet. I get it.
I more so hate him for his production in which he says that he should be paid as a top corner. One of the times he talked about how he should be paid as a top corner. Dude had maybe one interception. Like, he can play down in the box. Like, as a run stopper, ridiculous. He's
as a pass rusher, ridiculous.
Pass rusher, insane. Like, phenomenal. But if you're telling me that you're going to match up against Gronk, which he did, Gronk destroyed him. Like, he's not a coverage interception type guy. He's a guy, when you catch the ball, he's going to flip you over 7 times and you're going to land on your neck. But I don't know. I mean,
he doesn't have to be, though.
In that system with the Jets, he needed to be. In Seattle, he doesn't need to be. Now he could play basically the free safety that roams around, and just the Legion of Boom is back. Like, he can kill somebody and get away with it in Seattle.
So Harbaugh in Michigan has I'm trying to think what it's called. I think it's called the Cobra position.
Where it's just like the stalker.
Yeah, and Hudson played it this year. It's another one I actually liked. If they had that type of system in Seattle, Jamal Adams is literally the perfect specimen for that position.
He's scary.
I think it's called the Cobra. I think it is.
He's Matthews, but like, if he could play like Matthews and cover and catch, but he can't. Like, he's just a big dude that can hit and crush and kill. And like, if he can do that in Seattle, they'll be great. But back to their draft, Seattle, I got nothing for you. Like, who's he going to throw the ball to? Who's Russell Wilson? Who's he going to throw the ball to?
So with you saying that, the team I think had the worst draft, and a lot of people agree with this, so I don't mean to be repetitive. Green Bay, awful, like absolutely awful. Like, one of my boys and a friend of yours as well, big Packers fan, and he texted me after the first pick, like Rob, talk me out of this. What am I missing here? I was able to do it with Jordan Love. I think I did an all right job. Then, like, A.J. Dillon, love A.J. Dillon. I really do. A big fan of his. I know you hate him. I know that. I like A.J. Dillon if he's going to be used properly. If you're going to do a strict inside zone power runner, I'm in for him. I don't want to see him outside of the tackles, my personal opinion. Other than that, like, dude, what are you doing to Aaron Rodgers? My God. I mean, like, literally, I mean, I don't have it in front of me. I don't think they drafted a receiver.
They didn't. I was about to ask you. I think someone said a stat, and I know we're going to be wrong. I think it's been 4 years or 5 years where they haven't drafted an offensive a wide receiver playmaker for him. I mean, granted, they drafted the tight end out of Cincinnati, who's a good prospect, but you drafted him in the 3rd round. I mean, I'm looking at their draft right now, and you're right. I mean, they're right up there for like the worst draft of.
Yeah, it's bad.
How do you want to piss off your quarterback, who's considered one of the best quarterbacks of our generation, by literally getting him his future replacement? And like you said, I don't like A.J. Dillon. He's a one-dimensional running back who goes north and south. And granted, he's a log, but it ain't gonna work in this year's NFL. So, but it's insane.
So, I'm not going to say the Eagles for one that I loved, because I know you don't want me to talk about Jalen Hurts, which I already have, and I know you don't want me to talk about Jalen Reagor, who I would not be surprised if, when it's all said and done, that Reagor is the best receiver to come out of this draft. I'm not saying I think that's going to happen. However, I would not be surprised. I think Reagor was an absolutely incredible specimen coming out of TCU. I think Max Duggan was the worst collegiate quarterback I've ever seen in my entire life. I think Shea Patterson was better than him. It was atrocious, the tape. I watched 9 TCU games this year. 9. it was I was embarrassed watching this in my living room by myself. It was that bad. It was so bad. Rager is an absolute stud. I will go to war for that guy. That's
Would
one.
Lynn Bowden have been a good quarterback for him?
Okay, good point. No,
That's two players that you're in love with. How would that offense have been besides you sitting there every Saturday going, hee 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 hee,
so
being giddy?
so I watched I watched a lot of Bowden from 2 years ago because I knew he wasn't going to play quarterback this year. I'll be honest, I didn't think Vegas was going to be moving him to running back. They're going to use him all over the place. He's the Joker essentially. But the other day I went back and just watched all of his throws essentially. Man, his throws were pretty bad. It was pretty bad, and that's why I laugh at so many of the Raider fans that are actually saying that he should be the quarterback, because they clearly have not watched him at quarterback. But no, I'm really excited about him. But I'm not going to say the Eagles. I did love that. I did love Hightower also. Hightower, I think, is a great pick. I thought that they really rejuvenated the receiver room in this draft. I really do. But again, staying with the receiver class, because this receiver class was unbelievable, and this kills me to say this. This kills me. Denver's draft was fantastic, in my opinion. I think Denver had a phenomenal draft. You got Judy at 15. You get Hamler at 46. You get Michael O at 77. Ojemudia, sorry, I can say it, but I just always call him Michael O. Cushenberry's a great center. I loved Cushenberry. Loved him coming out of LSU. And then Alberto, a tight end to go with Fant. Dude. Oh, and then another one we talked about, Derek Tuska, North Dakota State. Dude, it kills me. It kills me. But phenomenal job. Their receiver room is just completely rebuilt. I like Locke. I liked Locke coming out of Mizzou. I did. His arm is ridiculous. If he can start getting some accuracy and start to read defense a little bit better, go to a second read a little bit more, he's going to be very good. It kills me to say it. I think their draft was fantastic. I really do.
No, I mean, I agree. And that's what pains me to say, because I know your allegiance and I want to make sure that the Raiders are doing okay. But at the same time, they're building a monster out there.
Yeah, they really are.
They have now two legitimate running backs, which I'm a big run first guy, which sets up the pass. But I mean, you have tight ends. Then you just draft one of the greatest wide receivers that was before the draft started. If you ask people who the best wide receiver was, and nobody watched any football, they would have just said Judy, just because of that's how it was set up.
He's a technician, man. He's a technician.
They're set up to win, and it's going to be an interesting year for them. Their defense is still solid, still strong.
Sure. And then they got that trade with the Titans. Oh my God. What did they give up?
They still need a nickel, though, I think, because they got rid of Harris Jr. is now a Charger, right?
Yes, he is. Yes. He is. Jarrell Casey. That's it. They got Jarrell Casey from Tennessee for a 7th-round pick. A 7th-round pick. He's a top 5 defensive tackle in the league. Like, it kills me, man. Like, they're doing it right. They really are. It hurts. It does. But that's who I'm going with. Sticking on the draft, who are some prospects? Give me some prospects that nobody is talking about. We already talked about Derek Tuska. We already talked about Lynch, Willekes. Give me some more.
All right. So I got 3 if we're going to talk about 3 different ones then, because I had those guys on my board just because of how great they were. And one of the guys on my board, so I'm going to talk about, is Geno Stone, the safety out of Iowa. One, I'm a big Iowa fan. I'm not an Iowa college football fan. I'm just an Iowa overall fan, in which they're coached up and how they play.
I was surprised he went as like low as he did.
He went
in 7 to Baltimore, didn't he?
7th round to Baltimore. And the reason why I have him on my list is, if you think about Baltimore, you think about a nasty frickin' defense. And you think about that defensive line, and he is 210 pounds as a safety.
Yep.
So if you don't start him at safety, that's fine. If you want to put him in there as a run stopper and drop him down, that's completely fine. Like, he's not going to go out there and he's not going to match up with tight ends, but he's a bruiser and he can just flat out play. and he was coached up right. I mean, like I said, Iowa just coaches players right. And he has no blemishes on his record. He was there the whole time. He's just a great overall player. I mean, that's one for me. What about one for you? What do you got?
Honestly, one of my favorite players in the draft, local to me, being from Temple, Isaiah Wright. I know you and I have talked about him a million times. I love that dude. Loved him. So watched a good amount of Temple games for him specifically, honestly. And his footwork is killer. And I'm also a huge special teams guy. I don't know why. I take a genuine interest in special teams. He is going to be a phenomenal return man and a gunner as well. He's going to be a great gunner. Washington got him as an undrafted free agent, and I was surprised because, I forget which bowl game he was in, but the coaches were just like, they loved him. They absolutely loved him. And he's just going to be a great find for Washington. He's going to be a return man for a long time. I could even see him playing the slot, maybe a dual slot, maybe like your second slot guy or your 5 or 6 receiver maybe. But he's going to be a very lethal player in my opinion. I think he's going to be very good, and I thought that was a great move by Washington. And if we're going to stick with Washington, one guy I semi brought up before, Khaleke Hudson from Michigan. He was that position. I think Harbaugh called it the Cobra position. I liked him a lot too, and he's another one that's going to be a big special teams guy. But if you can kind of play him the way the Jets were playing Jamal Adams, kind of like a will spot, maybe just off wide. There are receivers in this league he'll be able to cover. He's not going to be able to cover a slot receiver or anything like that, but he'll be able to cover the tight end. He'll be able to cover the running back. There are some big, like your old boy Kelvin Benjamin type receivers that he'd be able to line up with. He's just going to be a great find, and again, another special teams guy. But what's another one that you got?
I mean, Kelvin Benjamin was one biscuit away from being a tight end, and I mean that's just being nice. But I mean, you brought up great points that this year is so unique too that people don't realize with the rosters, the way that they're set up and how COVID is affecting everything is. If you have that much dimension to your game, that not only you can be a wide receiver but a special teams player.
Yep.
A gunner or a returner, it's insane. And that's just something that to keep in mind. I mean, my other two that I have, and I'll just do one of them right now, they're a little bit higher than I normally talk about draft pick wise, but the reason why I'm talking about them is just because the NFL shadows stories in a certain way where you're never going to hear about anybody unless you're a fan of them. So yep. Anthony McFarland Jr., the running back that came out of Maryland. Mm-hmm. So he ended up going in the 4th round of Pittsburgh. He ran a 4.40. This dude can flat out fly. So putting him in that running back scenario that they have in Pittsburgh, where last year, if people think about it in Pittsburgh had 17 different quarterbacks and 487 different running backs. So if you put him back in that system where not only can he do that, but he can catch the ball on the open field. So he's a field receiver in that regard, and he also returns kicks and punts. So like he can do anything and everything that you need him to do. And I just thought the fact that he slid to the 4th round was amazing to me. But then again, I mean, this year's draft with running back was as deep as you could talk about it. And the value that the NFL puts on running backs, like I said, it doesn't align with my values, where their running backs are just going later and later and later each year. And contracts for running back are just getting scarce. And it's just scary to see. And that's the next one I wanted to talk about was him, Anthony McFarland Jr. with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I like that. Last one I'll talk about is I want to hear your third one. Bryce Hall, cornerback, Virginia. I think he went to the Jets.
Yes, I was so pissed because we were on the clock and we drafted, I think it was either Fromm or Bass. So a quarterback or a kicker. Go on. I'm sorry. I won't. I digress.
I think it was round 5. He is fun to watch, man. He is physical. I don't. He's another one actually I had above Arnett. I don't know how he made it to the 5th round. I missed something. He his doesn't have the best hips in the world, but he's stuck to his receivers pretty well. He played the sideline perfectly. I think he's a strict outside guy. He used the sideline perfectly to his advantage to make sure that was basically an extra defender. He can go get the ball. He can tackle, man. I love corners that sniff the ball carrier. They sniff out the ball. They want to tackle. I love that. That's why I couldn't stand Garyon Conley for the longest time, because he did not want to tackle at all. This dude, man, he's looking for the ball. I think they got a really, really good pick out of that. And I give them props for that. Great move there.
So angry about it because they kept saying he was falling because of his durability issues, I believe. So they were talking about he had an ankle injury or something his senior year. And it's like, you mean to tell me a guy that's playing in the ACC who was legitimately being talked about in the top 3 rounds, I mean, he still went, but like he falls that far, who can play outside corner.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind. But my last guy that I have on my list is he's not being talked about at all because he went to the team with the number 1 overall pick. So he's never going to get talked about. And that's Logan Wilson. So it's the linebacker
Wyoming.
out of Wyoming. And he's not going to jump off the page. He's not going to blow you out of the water with his speed. He's not going to do anything crazy, and he's going to get 10, 15 sacks. But what is he going to do? His damn job. He's going to do his job perfect every single time. He can get sideline to sideline. He can guard the tight end if need be. But he's also, in the next couple of years, I say the next 2-3 years, he's going to be the defensive captain. Like, he's going to be the one that's running the show there if he can stay healthy. He's just an overall sleeper pick. He can play special teams. He can do anything and everything. It's literally what he did, and I grant it's a lesser conference playing out in Wyoming, but he was just racking up tackles year in and year out. He had over 100+ tackles his senior year. And it's like, okay, I get it. The competition isn't that great, but still, to have tackling concepts that he had and the way in which he wraps people up, that translates. If you're a bad tackler and you're trying to blow people up, that translates when you get to the pros. But yeah, he's just a solid guy, and I'm very excited to see what he does and what the Cincinnati Bengals do, especially if there is no NFL this year, what happens next year. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what we grow off of. But, I mean, off of what we talked about, Rob, I know we're running close up to our time here, but one thing that we want to do at the end of each show is talk about some hypotheticals. So it's just a little section where you guys can give us some questions that we could shoot to each other. Or, Rob, I know you had some questions that you might want to hypothetically throw out there and we can bounce off each other. But what do you got for today? What can we wrap up with today on episode 1?
The reason I want to do this is I want to help people learn about the X's and O's of football. I want there to be other people like us out there that, look at more than just the highlight tapes that are all over YouTube. I want people to learn about the game. I want people to take a genuine interest in the strategizing that goes behind it. I want you to, with that in mind, I want you guys to know what our schemes are, like what we are thinking. How would we handle things if we were in this position? How would we handle things if we were the general manager of this team? I want people to know that. So I figured questions like this will be a good way of going about it. So the first one I'm going to ask you, going to keep it pretty simple today because I know we don't have a lot of time. Would you rather have the best defensive line in the league and the worst secondary, or the best secondary in the league and the worst defensive line?
Easy. No questions asked. I'd rather have the best defensive line and the worst secondary. You can make the greatest quarterback on earth feel like a Andy playing quarterback. Like, it can make him feel like me standing back there with no football experience. And that's how you beat Tom Brady. Tom Brady is one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest, which it pains me to say, but I'm a huge fan of him now because he's a Buck. Like, you can make him mess up and you win the Super Bowl by the defensive line play. If you can get to the quarterback and have less time, it doesn't matter how great of a wide receiver you are. It doesn't matter if you run a 4 flat 40. You're not going to get open if the defensive line is there. Also, if you have a great defensive line, they can't run the ball, which will then set up the pass. You just can't do it. If you have a great secondary, that's all well and good. But if they have all day to throw, the wide receivers know what route they're running. The cornerbacks don't know what route they're running. Unless you're the Houston Astros of football, you're not going to know what play is happening. So that's easy for me. That's easy for me. But since it's your question, what are you thinking?
Oh, same, 100% same. The reason I asked that is I kind of want to get the point across that it's my opinion and now your opinion, which is good. Defensive line to me is everything in defense, honestly. And not everything, sorry, but like it's the most important aspect in my opinion. Honestly, for the reasons you said, I can't say it any better than that. For the longest time, I was against drafting corners in the first round. I've kind of swayed off that a little bit. But man, I would just much rather have a line of freak, just bosses all over the line that are going to get through, occupy all the gaps, get through, basically turn the O-line into a bunch of turnstiles to get the quarterback uneasy, and get in his head a little bit. That I totally agree with you. I can't say it any better. So.
No, and I know we're running up against it, but I got one quick one that it's probably going to be longer than it is. But with this year being as unique as it is, and this year with players having the ability to opted out players, the money then becomes back in your pool. If you were a GM of a team that had 3 of your top 4 guys opt out, what would you do with that money? Granted, it's not your skill position players. Let's say it's a D end, a cornerback. They don't need to be your top 3 paid guys, but let's say a D end, a cornerback, and a guard opt out. What are you doing with that money and why?
So I'm sure you saw today the signings that took place. Kelsey got his deal, $57 million. Look at how Kansas City is handling salary cap right now.
It's insane. They're geniuses. So
the salary cap is a game, and there are a million loopholes. So to answer that question, I am reinvesting that money right now. I'm looking at not the biggest man in the world, but right now, based upon what's available, I'm looking at Clowney. I'm looking at these guys that are going to make my team better. I'll reinvest that money and figure out next year, because I'm sure that, man, there are so many players out there, contracts not being guaranteed. There's a lot of contracts that are out there that were basically front loaded. You can get out of them easily next year and figure it out then. I'm reinvesting it going through. I'm going ham in the free agency market. That's what I'm doing. I'm getting everybody that's going to make my team better within that amount and working the contracts out to where I'm spending the majority of the money this year, and next year might not hurt me as much. Now, where that could hurt is the fact that if this year doesn't happen, those contracts would then roll over to next year, and now I have all of them. However, same thing, the salary cap is a game. It's a board game. That's all it is. I'm going to have a good salary cap guy, a capologist, if you will, that's going to literally go through and tell me who are the people that I can maneuver from, who are the ones I can kind of, free up some space, exactly, and then take it from there. That's what I'm doing.
No, I agree with the aspect of that. And my biggest thing, too, not even free agents, I'm reinvesting in the players that I have.
Absolutely, 100%.
Someone is coming up that needs a contract renegotiated, or we're going to give them a big deal. You know what deal I'm giving them? 4 years, $40 million, like 30 guaranteed. If I can front load the entire thing, you know what I mean? That doesn't work out logistically, but you know what I'm saying, where I'm going to front load every contract, pay all cash up now, bonus everybody out, roster bonus, workout bonus, do anything I possibly can with that money that I'm saving on those players that opted out, because you don't know what's guaranteed. And next year, those players are going to come back on the books. And a lot of the players that opted out were the big money players, where a lot of their money was guaranteed this year. So a big hit is going to happen next year on some of those teams where people opted out. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. And it's good to see that we're on the same page. Otherwise, this relationship that we have, it just wouldn't work. And
we're good, boo. Don't worry about it. But one thing though, and the reason I didn't say that is because there's a second part to that question. In order to do that, I have to know who my owner is, because I have to make sure that I have that money to spend up front. The reason I know that is because up until this year, we couldn't, the Raiders couldn't afford, we were like the Oakland A's in Moneyball. Like, we were charging players for the soda and the vending machines. Your owner has to have that money to pay up front. And signing bonuses are a big deal. So that's the second part to that question. That's why I didn't answer it that way. But I totally agree with you.
Makes sense. And if it wasn't for 2 years ago, nobody would sign. We could have given somebody a guaranteed contract of $100 million, and they would have said, like what Marshawn Lynch said, nah, man, I don't want to play in New York City. I'm not trying to be up in Buffalo. It's like, no, nobody wanted to be where we are. So, but now that's a new mantra, where we signed one of the better left tackles in the league. He's now getting paid like the 6th highest tackle rate, which is, he wants to be here, and that's what we need. But
sure. All right. So that's going to wrap up today. We're going to do this once or twice a week. We really haven't decided yet. Please share, follow, reach out. Any questions, any thoughts you might have, comment below, please, in the description. Anything you got, feel free to follow us. Andy, you want to go through our social media handles?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow us on Twitter at @the_War Room 33. Same thing on Instagram. And then Rob, you got our Facebook, right?
Yeah, it's War Room Pod. So follow us on War Room Pod on Facebook.
Awesome. So, hey, we really do appreciate everybody listening in. You'll get to know us more as we go along this. We really appreciate you guys being part of the 33rd War Room, and we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Everybody stay safe.